My daughter was battling cancer. She beat it, but she lost all her hair in the process. Well, I'm coming to you guys today because I have a wild one. My daughter got married and she had a wig during it because she's self-conscious of her bald head. However, her stepbrother decides to yank her wig off of her head, embarrassing her in front of everyone. Well, I snapped and I went after this little brat, and now everyone's making me look like the bad guy. But there's much more to this story. Let me start this off with a little bit of a backstory about me and Megan. Megan is my 16-year-old daughter and had been through numerous traumatic events that half the kids her age have gone through. Her dad died when she was at the mere age of 4 in a terrible car accident. I met Justin in college. There, I was focusing on my teacher's lecture when something moving in the corner of my eye catches my attention. It was Justin, who had managed to sneak into the class without being seen, and he gave me a measly smile and a smirk when he saw that I noticed him. After class, he walked up to me and we made small talk. Justin and I kept bumping into each other during our time in college, and when we had freshly graduated, he asked me out. We hit it off pretty quickly, and soon, Justin was on one knee before I knew it, proposing to me in a fancy restaurant with wine and a fancy tablecloth. I'd been 4 months pregnant with Megan. We got married in a church with both of our families and friends present to commemorate the day that congratulated us. We were a happy family of 3, but fate had planned otherwise. My heart had broken into 2 pieces when I received that call of Justin's demise in a car accident. Megan had been devastated after the untimely death of her dad and refused to play or get out of bed for weeks. I met Tom during one of the hospital visits to the pediatrician. He was there with his son Ben, who had fallen off a tree and broken his hand. I made small talk with Ben, and we shared the stress of how tough looking after kids can be. He told me he was a single father and had separated from his ex a few months ago, and Tom had gotten custody of Ben. I applauded him for his efforts in looking after Ben and shared my own story of how I was managing work and looking after my daughter after my husband died a while back. Tom sympathized with me and appreciated how strong I had been for Megan and handled not only her but my own grief too. Well, we bumped into each other at a park, and when I learned that Tom lived not too far from me, from then on, we became good friends, and I favored visiting his house and spending time with him and Ben. Even though Ben did not take a liking to me, I figured he would be a good playmate for Megan. Not long after, I married Tom, and he, along with his son Ben, who was 7 years old at the time, moved in with me and Megan, in Tom's house that was gifted to him by his mother as a wedding gift. Megan was not happy about the change, as she did not get along well with Ben. We figured they would grow into it and maybe one day accept each other as siblings and be good friends. When Megan was 14, she had been diagnosed with an early form of skin cancer. The treatment required heavy doses of chemicals pumped into her over the course of 2 years. 2 years when we received the news that the cancer was gone. We celebrated, but Megan had to lose something in the process. Her hair had started to fall when the treatment first began, and by the time it ended, there was barely any hair left on her head. Megan had been a social person. She had made lots of friends at her school and also socialized well amongst our family. But after her hair loss, Megan had retracted from society. She kept to herself and refused to talk to anybody. She was now insecure about her looks and no longer met her friends or welcomed them to our house. She even refused to meet family members in person. It's been bad, to say the least. Ben, which is my stepson, did not gel well with Megan. He had his own personality and was quite popular online. He liked to play pranks on people, record them, and post them online for the viewers' entertainment. Victims of his pranks often called him a mischievous child, but Tom had asked me to let it slide as, quote, they were harmless pranks that gave him a bit of joy. I let them slide as Ben appeared to be happy. I had witnessed how sad he had been when he got the news that, well, Tom was getting married to me. He had not taken his parents' separation lightly. Once he had pranked a shopkeeper by falling a basket of apples and just running away. He would put groceries in multiple trolleys and leave them in aisles, making the shopkeeper have to do more work than before. And, well, the shopkeeper did not know who was causing a ruckus until the security cameras were checked. The shopkeeper had been good friends with Tom, as he was a usual customer, and let Ben go with a warning. Next time he warned Tom that there would be police involved. There were other pranks such as splashing random passerbys with water balloons or squirting ketchup onto the food that people were eating at picnics. Ben loved to annoy children and watch as they, cried for their parents. He would post these prank videos on Instagram where like-minded teenagers like him made popular with likes and reposts. Lately, Ben has gotten worse as he's constantly nagging Megan and throwing around jokes about her looks. I've explained it to him to be nicer to his little sister, but he does when I'm not around. Ben had tried taking pictures of her and posting them secretly when I had caught him doing so and shut that down. While my husband thought it was just a, quote, harmless teasing. My husband's sister Alexa often visited us and missed seeing Megan around. She dropped in last week along with my mother-in-law to give our family an invitation to her wedding. She was getting married to her boyfriend of 5 years and it was rather a grand wedding. My mother-in-law insisted to see Megan, but she refused to come out of her room, and I stood in her support. Then Alexa and my mother-in-law insisted I bring her to the wedding as it's been ages since everyone saw her, and it would do Megan some good to socialize with her cousins and other family members. Tom too agreed, and I told them I would talk to Megan about it. Well, she flat out refused, and I spent a great deal of time trying to help her see that her family members would care for her, regardless of her looks, and tried to convince her to start socializing again and see family. She'd finally agreed under one condition, that I let her wear a wig to the wedding. I was overjoyed and accepted her condition, and since the wedding was in a week, we went out shopping the same afternoon and bought her a pixie hairstyle wig, which I let her pick out. Megan looked stunningly beautiful in it, at least I thought so. Ben and Tom had laughed at her right behind her back, and I berated them for doing so and asked not to react that way in her presence as it would hurt her. Come the day of the wedding, there's a flutter of activity around the house as everyone got ready to attend it. Megan put on her best dress and combined it with the wig. Megan looked beautiful and outshined us all. Ben seemed jealous that everyone's attention would be on Megan, but soon forgot about it and got busy on his phone. When we arrived at the wedding, everyone flocked around to greet Megan as she stood, smiling shyly and greeting everybody. Well, everything was going well, and everyone talked about how marvelous she was looking. Until for one moment when I was talking to Alexa and congratulating her and wishing her a happy married life, Ben snuck up behind Megan and snatched away her wig, exposing her head to everybody. A few of her cousins and relatives who were standing around started laughing, which caught my attention. I turned to look at Megan and saw tears well up in her eyes. I was shocked and froze, but Megan yelled at Ben, then took her wig and ran away. I was upset as I saw guests laughing and looked over my shoulder to where Tom was sitting beside his mother. To my shock and surprise, I saw both of them laughing along with others. My blood boiled as I stood up and lost it on Ben as I berated him while everyone watched along. There were whispers as I took my stuff, got Megan, and got into the car and went home. While at home, I was bombarded with calls from Tom that I did not pick up. I knew when Tom would arrive home later, drama would ensue and he would lash out at me for leaving like that. Tom and Ben arrived 2 hours later. Ben was tired and went straight to bed, not as much as looking into my direction. Tom walked up to me, and by the look on his face, I knew what to expect. He lashed out at me for what I did, leaving them, Ben and Tom, at the wedding with no ride back home. They had to wait an hour or so to get a ride, and my antics of taking Megan and storming off had upset Alexa, who said I had ruined her wedding by doing this. He also scolded me for not picking up his calls. What if they had an emergency and needed to reach out to me? But in my fit of anger, I was ignoring them, and Tom called me unreasonable for doing what I've done. I argued with him about how Ben had embarrassed Megan by exposing her and humiliating her publicly in front of all the family, friends, and relatives. I added how this one small incident, as he put it, might as well have nearly destroyed what was left of her self-esteem. He said that I was overreacting and that Ben had no malicious intent, as it was just, quote, kids teasing each other. I said that I was sick of Ben making fun of Megan, but he said that's just their way of bonding as step-siblings, and I was getting in the way of it and being overprotective and unreasonable. We did not talk after that, and Ben's refusing to apologize to Megan and his dad backing him up. I feel like the family is split into two sides of a war, when Ben deserved to be conflicted. I know I should not have left Ben and Tom alone at the wedding without a ride back home. But Tom was an adult, and I had to put my devastated daughter first. After all, was he not laughing along with everyone at her? Alexa had called me up later to scream at me for leaving her brother and her nephew alone and for ruining her wedding by causing drama that puts me in the center of the spotlight. My mother-in-law also left me text messages, calling me out for not picking up Tom's calls. The family is taking sides also, and some of them side with Ben, as he's just a child who was doing a silly prank. Some of them sided with Megan, though, saying it was traumatic to her after what Ben did exposing her in public. I feel conflicted and don't know whether I should apologize to Ben for blowing up at him, or stand my ground and support Megan. So, am I the a-hole for taking my daughter and leaving the wedding after her stepbrother pulled her wig? Update number 1. Since all of you have been asking for an update, here it is. I apologize for not being more active on here, as I had to sort out things. Megan had become more closed up after that. She grew apart from Tom. A few days after the wedding, Tom had organized a picnic for all of us to attend at a place Megan had been pestering to visit. He did that as an apology gesture. Ben had kept his antics on the down low and did not bother Megan for quite a long time, fearing retaliation from her. Megan had taken the humiliation brought to her by Ben to heart. It had been really tough for me to convince her to go with me to the wedding and get her out of her insecurity. The same insecurity that was now back with an even stronger intensity. I could see Megan was hurting and wanted to do something to help my daughter feel a bit better. Combined with that and the rage I was feeling towards Ben for his actions, I had made up my mind to take my revenge on him. That would teach him a lesson. Tom had to go on a business meeting in another city. He contemplated taking Ben with him, but I chipped in saying how that would be showing partially to Megan and would make her sad. So, he decided against it and went on the business trip alone. As soon as he was out the door, the next day I carried out my revenge. Ben had been gaming early morning, as he usually does. I could hear him laugh and him gloating about his prank on his stepsister. I was having conflicted feelings before doing it, but the image of Megan crying all day flashed in my head, and I walked to my bedroom to get to the chewing gum. I stood there chewing it for a while, watching Ben's game and bullying someone on it playing badly. This only fueled my anger. I proceeded to walk over to Ben and stick the chewing gum over his hair. It was not a small amount of gum either, as his hair got all tangled up in it. He was still gaming for all to see, and I could see laughter and emojis filling up the screen as Ben threw his phone away and ran to check in the mirror. He then screamed out loud, startling me and waking Megan up, who came running out of her room to see what all the commotion was about. As soon as she saw Ben crying with chewing gum in it, trying to take it off, and me with the chewing gum pack in my hand, she knew what I've done. I told her I did it for her, and now Ben can feel what it felt like to never bother anyone with his pranks again. Ben starts to cry out loud, and he proceeded to run into his room and slam the door behind him. I stood in the silence that followed afterward, as Megan looked on and went outside without another word. I had acted in a fit of rage and taken action on Ben and humiliated him in front of his followers, as he had done with Megan. I'd only hoped to teach him a lesson, but I had ended up making it much worse. Ben was not devastated about becoming a laughingstock online and was not coming out of his room. Over 2 days, I only saw him around the house when he came out to get food. He had shaved all his head off, and, well, that was before tangled hair with chewing gum was now a clean-shaved head like that of Megan's. The only good thing that came out of it was that Ben had stopped pestering Megan about her looks, as he too now looked the same. I'm dreading the arrival of Tom's back from his business trip. He had called me hours after Ben had shaved his head to yell at me for destroying his son's happiness, reputation, and hair, all because I wanted to teach him a lesson. A few days later, when the doorbell rang, I half expected it to be Tom back from the trip early to reprimand me. But it was Alexa and my mother-in-law standing at the doorway, with an angered look on both of their faces, and before I could greet them, they pushed me aside and entered the house, calling out for Ben. As soon as Ben heard them, he came running out, and I saw he had a bag packed with him. Before leaving, Alexa and my mother-in-law turned back and yelled at me for abusing Ben and humiliating him. I told them it was just hair and would grow back in a day or two. Well, they told me that I had lost Ben and all of his followers, and he was now going to be teased by everyone at school. I told them that Megan too had felt the same way when Ben made fun of her looks and posted her pictures online. Without another word, they picked up Ben's bags and some of his stuff from his room and left with Ben, saying Tom would come home and handle me, but until then, Ben was no longer safe in my care. Megan supported me as she knew what I did for her, to support her and take a stand against the bully that Ben was. She came and enveloped me in a hug as I cried, knowing that this may as well be the end of my marriage with Tom. Megan consoled me and told me that I could try explaining it to Tom when he gets back, and he would understand as he knew his son better than anyone. But I knew how Tom was going to react, and it's going to be far from good. Update number 2. I did not expect this to blow up. All of you were asking for an update about the confrontation between Tom and me. Ben and his farewell ball at the school, and had to cancel going to it as he would be laughed at with a shaved head, he said. He did not want to wear a wig, as Megan had to the wedding in fear of it being snatched off and exposing him. Ironic, right? Tom had arrived from his business trip and had gone straight to his mother's house where Ben was staying. He picked up Ben and drove over back to our house. Ben had a lot to say. The anger he had first felt had diminished over the past week or two, and by the time he was back, it was almost dissipated. But it was still there. Ben came in and went straight to his room, refusing to meet my eyes or talk to me. Tom and I followed. Tom sat on the edge of Ben's bed with his heart seeming heavy with a mix of confusion, anger, and concern. He stared at Ben, whose hair was once thick and luscious and was now like a mowed-down lawn of grass. Tom's mind raced, trying to comprehend the reason and trying to find the right words, as he did not want to make the situation worse than it already was. Tom asked me to explain my actions as Ben listened intently. I could see by the look on his face he was expecting me to beg for his forgiveness. Megan stood by the doorway, just quietly listening into our conversation, and my heart sank as I explained that, in my anger, I had not thought clearly and had only wanted revenge and to teach Ben a lesson. And I saw no better way than doing it while he was on a live stream video game with all of his friends. I admitted that I did not know Ben had a party to attend to and could not do so because of what I did. My voice was strained with emotion, and I noticed Tom's anger start to bubble within him. He tried to keep his composure as he responded that there might have been a better way to teach Ben a lesson, other than taking it out on his looks. He added that Ben was just a child, and my eyes filled with tears. I told him I realized my mistake and asked him to let it go. Ben had played his part in bullying Megan for her looks, and I had played my part in showing Ben what it felt like to be Megan's place, and the receiving end of pranks that humiliated somebody. Well, Tom took a deep breath, desperately attempting to understand my perspective, and he realized my actions have stemmed from a place of love, protection, and care from Megan, but could not help but feel that I crossed a line. Ben added in hysterical tears to make matters worse, and when Tom spoke, his voice was harsh and low. He asked me to take Megan and get out of his home. Well, I got me and Megan a hotel, hoping that drama would play out in the next few days and just die down, and soon we would be back at Tom's house with Ben running around playing another one of his pranks again. I wondered why Ben's reputation online had mattered much more to Tom than to Megan and me, who were his family. But what I had done to Ben was unforgivable. I received mail from Tom at the hotel I was staying at. When I opened, saw the divorce papers inside, I shook with hurt as the papers dropped from my hands onto the floor. Tom has also filed a restraining order against me for harassing his son. I knew Alexa and my mother-in-law had pushed him to do so, and I wanted to have a final word with Tom and get closure as to why he was destroying our family over Ben's hair, which had probably grown back by now in his social media presence online. But now it was impossible to do so. I signed the divorce papers, and the bank contacted me to know that I was removed from Tom's bank account and from the will we had stipulated together. I would have to find me and Megan an apartment to live in, and since I still had my job, the money would be enough to sustain me and my daughters in the year to come. The divorce had felt like a weight off my shoulders. There was no more Ben to hurt Megan's feelings or make her feel insecure, and no more Tom to only take his son's side, even though he would be at fault most of the time. I look forward to building a life for me and Megan and working hard toward the goal. After all, nothing was more important to me than Megan's happiness. So the comment section of this one was not happy with Ben. They're saying Ben was 18 years old. He's way too old to be playing these kind of pranks, and he definitely knows better. For what he did, it was ridiculous. This poor girl went through so much, losing her hair to cancer treatments, and to get embarrassed like this is absolutely absurd. However, a lot of people are also taking the side of Tom, which was Ben's father. They weren't really giving an exact reason why they were taking his side. They were just saying, hey, he's been through a lot too. I want to hear from you guys. Who do you think's in the wrong for this story? In my opinion, it has to be Ben. But if you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. Let's just talk about it in the comment section down below. Either way, it ends in divorce, and I didn't see another option for this because it seemed like there was a huge family feud this entire time, and it all went back to Ben. So guys, that's it for today's stories. I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure you leave a comment down below so we can talk about it. And, well, there's going to be more videos, so hit that subscribe button. Just remember, you never know what people are going through in life, so it's cool to be kind. I'll see you guys in the next one.